And I too want to raise the circumstances surrounding the closure of the most famous store in Ireland and the making the sacking of the 460 employees, 330 direct employment and 330 concession holders in employment, and the manner in which this the circumstances took place, how a company could come in, sell off to another company, how then that company could divide the purchase into two legal entities, one 100% profitable, 100% profit being made on it, and the other going straight into liquidation. And the manner in which all of that took place, the secret circumstances behind it, the degree of collusion that went on over a period of months in bringing about that legal course, the manipulation, the exploitation that took place, and the total discarding and lack of concern for the loyal workforce that had provided such a service to Clerys over the years. So it's a matter that must be addressed and redressed in a robust fashion. And I know, Taoiseach, that already you have dealt with the first side of it, and that is dealing with the workers, that yourself and Minister Nash have met the workforce, that there has been engagement with the liquidators, there's been engagement with the trade union movement representing the workers, SIP2 in particular and Mandate, and that today you have made a team available in Liberty Hall to deal with the entitlements of the workforce themselves. And that is absolutely essential, and it's been done expeditiously. Secondly, we must take whatever steps are necessary to rebalance company law so that such ruthless vulture capital transactions cannot take place in the future. Clearly the law is heavily weighted in favour of the business/employer and leaves the workforce entirely vulnerable in the present circumstances. Now, I note that the Taoiseach has asked Minister Nash to provide a report to him, and I hope that will be done in a very timely fashion. And secondly, that any report in relation to dealing with these abominable transactions in this underhand fashion, that this will be forwarded to the law review, the company law review group. And I would hope, Taoiseach, that all of this will be done very expeditiously so that whatever necessary measures are needed to ensure that it doesn't happen again, that they will be put in place very, very urgently.
To thank the deputies for raising this very important issue. This is an incredibly difficult time for the staff of Clerys, who have given so much to the company and who have been treated appallingly. I do hope that the business owners who are involved in these transactions have some sense of business ethics, propriety and fair play, particularly for the workers, the employees of the concessionaires and the concessionaires themselves, and the creditors of the company. Because at first glance there are many questions to be answered here. Prior to the termination of employment, there is an entitlement to minimum notice under the Minimum Notice and Terms of Employment Acts. This basic entitlement was not afforded to the Clerys workers. I consider it imperative that workers are treated properly at all times and that they and their representatives are consulted on matters affecting their employment. There are entities involved in this transaction that did not respect this concept, and this is totally unsatisfactory, inappropriate, and is, to my view, totally unacceptable. My department and the Department of Jobs and Enterprise will examine whether all aspects of the relevant legislation have been complied with and whether or not that legislation needs to be strengthened and how. But in the first instance, my thoughts are with the people, the workers I met with at some length this morning at a briefing session which was hosted by my department to tell them of the welfare and employment supports that we in the Department of Social Protection can provide. At briefings of this type, which are standard for the officials in my department. Officials from the department advise the employees who have lost their jobs on the for instance, the intro process, job seekers payments, and redundancy and insolvency entitlements, as well as information on other schemes, including rent supplement that they may wish to have recourse to. Information is also given in relation to options and assistance available relating to returning to work and in relation to the short-term enterprise allowance, as well as training and education options. The department will ensure that job seekers' claims will not be delayed pending the liquidator resolving individual issues in relation to any leave accrued but not yet taken. This means that job seekers' claims can be paid quickly, subject to the usual criteria, and reconciled as may be required at a future date. The department is informing its network of local offices in the Greater Dublin area of these developments to ensure that claims from workers who are affected are processed in a speedy and in a sensitive matter. I have to express my gratitude to SIPTU for their excellent support in this regard, and I believe mandates similarly. In fact, normally the services of the department would be made available on the premises. People will recall the closure of Mount Carmel Hospital. In this case, as we saw in the pictures, the locks were put on the doors, and I want to say I'm thankful to SIPTU for making a premises available to us near the worker's place of employment, and also facilitating the liquidators to be there this morning as well. And a significant number of the workers were there today. The engagement will provide information to all workers, including those, I should emphasise, employed by the concession holders. The primary focus of my department at this time is to ensure the efficient and the prompt taking of claims for job seekers' benefit, to ensure that the workers get their entitlements at the early possible opportunity. In addition to the range of information and advice being provided by the Department of Social Protection, there were officials there from the National Employment Rights Authority, and also representatives of the liquidators KPMG attended today's session to provide information to affected workers. Now, a representative of the liquidator has verbally advised the Department of Social Protection that all staff have been made redundant and that P45s will issue this week. I understand that it is possible that one or two staff from the payroll area in Clerys may be retained temporarily to assist with the liquidation. The liquidator will seek, on behalf of workers, payment from the insolvency payment scheme in respect of unpaid wages, accrued but untaken leave, and payment in lieu of statutory notice and statutory redundancy under the redundancy payment scheme. It is intended that individual meetings will be held between the liquidator and workers affected to determine on an individual basis the extent of the liabilities. The department will deal promptly with individual applications submitted in respect of the insolvency payment scheme by the liquidator. So I hope that that's helpful, particularly obviously to the workers involved, to whom I explained a lot of this in person this morning, and they were accompanied by various officials, by various union officials, and by shop stewards who'd been working in Clerys. But I met people who had, more than 40 years service, whose life was wrapped up in the store. And as somebody who's a lifelong customer and my family of the store, and so I think like a lot of Dubliners, I'm personally knowledgeable of the kind of service that this particular shop has given. I want to say that we will seek to have workers obtain all their entitlements as quickly as possible.
Well, I want to welcome the Taoiseach's very speedy and comprehensive response to the needs of the workforce and providing them with the information to expeditiously deal with their entitlements and secondly, her commitment to investigating the fact that minimum notice was not provided in accordance with the Employment Acts, and I certainly would like to see that investigated to the full and whatever appropriate sanctions applied. In the broader context, Taoiseach, we have had the collapse of the Irish economy in recent times. We've had a huge number of impaired assets. A lot of those have been sold under NAMA and under other receiverships, and very often vulture capitalists have purchased them. There is the danger that a number of those could be coming on the market, that these vulture capitalists would be anxious to make a quick buck, coming back into the Irish market, discarding the workforce, and in seeking to impose redundancy payments and welfare payments on the Irish state rather than making the contribution themselves. So for that reason, it's extremely important that we do look at the legislation as rapidly as possible to see that this sort of thing cannot happen again. And secondly, we must ensure that the recovery that is taking place in the Irish economy is a decent recovery, and that it's based on the respect for the workforce, and it's based on a sense of fairness, and that we don't want this type of vulture capitalist approach, which is ruthless and is only concerned with profit and has no concern for the workforce, which makes all of the businesses in the country profitable. So in conclusion, could I say, Taoiseach, that we need to act swiftly in relation to ensuring that something of this nature does not take place again, and we need to ensure that our own domestic companies and employers stand apart and make it quite clear that they will have nothing to do with this type of behaviour.
2 minutes remaining.
Well, again, I want to thank the members who've raised this issue for raising it. Just let me say, in relation to the people who have been working in Clerys, many of them all their lives, whole families, connected families, working there. As one group of people whom I met this morning said of a man with more than 40 years service, that in fact Clerys was his family. And I think all of us can appreciate the level of commitment that's been put in. So I actually want to say of the people who worked at Clerys, the people who are shamed and disgraced by this are the people who took part in the arrangements to do this, not the workers in Clerys. I think respect for them, if I may say this to the deputies, is exceptionally high among the people of Dublin and the people of Ireland. But we seem to have a set of people, business people, and, you know, there are lots of very good employers in this country who must be appalled at what has happened to a group of workers in an entirely undeserved way. Because remember, as well as the work that the unions have done, a huge amount of positive contact in Ireland between trade unions and employers' organisations to ensure that we have in this country a level of decency and a level of regulation which gives workers decent terms and conditions. And in fact, we're going further on that. We have before the Dáil at the moment legislation in relation to collective bargaining, which the trade unions have looked for over many decades, and which I'm confident most of the members and the parties in this House will support. But I think the people who have to be ashamed of themselves are the people who set out to approach this in a particular technical way. We don't yet know the full details. We have seen some descriptions in the newspapers of various stratagems that were employed. And as I said, we will be looking at all of that. I'm sure so will, I know my colleague Minister Jad Nash will be. I'm sure Minister Richard Bruton will be extremely concerned that the legislation of his department could be used in this way to circumvent people's genuine rights that they've contributed to. And also, I'm concerned, as the Minister for Social Protection, for the implications of this in relation to the Social Insurance Fund, to which everybody who pays PRSI contributes, so that it's there for people when they need it. So I want to say that we're going to look at, and the Department of Jobs and Enterprise has committed to this as well, to examine whether all the aspects of the relevant legislation have been complied with and whether that legislation needs to be strengthened. I also want to say as well, in respect to what Deputy Costello was saying, that we don't want to see this happening again, and you know, we'll have to examine what happened here. There is a situation, for instance, in taxation, where you can have over-aggressive tax planning. I heard the suggestion that this may have been arranged, perhaps in secret, probably almost certainly in secret, over a number of months. I don't know yet, deputies, as to whether or not that's correct. We just simply have an amount of information, but we do know informally, my department today, from the mediators, that all the staff have been made redundant, and that P45s will issue this week. And for those of you who've had some involvement in labour law and this type of situation will know that that initial information allows for the issuing of the redundancy notices, all of which are in a process in terms of the legislation in the Department of Jobs and Enterprise.
Thank you.
I will undertake that all of the matters will be addressed as quickly as is possible in accordance with the law. And it is now possible, with all the reforms we've made in the Intrio system, to pay people relatively quickly. And as I said, we can do that. It wasn't always possible. Now it is possible with the new systems to do that. And that's what I would hope the Department will be able to do over the next few days. And we will also liaise closely, because we pay out the redundancy payments. Somebody referenced Vita Cortex as a case, and some other cases. In the case of Vita Cortex, the Department of Social Protection, once we got the information and once the relevant requirements had been complied with, we were in fact able to pay the workers within a very short period of time. And hopefully, if we can get the different requirements met as quickly as possible, we can also make arrangements to meet the entitlements of the workers on the redundancy side as well as quickly as possible.
And the next item, the detection of BSE on a farm in County Louth. These matters have been raised by Deputies Fergus O'Dowd and Eamon O'Keefe. So